First bit of business will be the public comment portion, and we'll have another public comment at 9:30. But if you'd like to if you want to comment on any of the items to be discussed in the closed session, this would be the appropriate time. I do have a card from Larry Johnson. Was this something you wanted to do at this?
Not with the closed session, no.
Excuse me?
It had nothing to do with the closed session.
Well, you could either go now or at 9:30, whichever you prefer.
Doesn't matter to me. We can do it now and get it out the way and
Okay.
clear your guys' schedule.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm here because of public perception, which becomes reality in the lack of facts or truth. We're still waiting to actually find out what happened with the Hurlong sale. And just firing migrant workers and saying, oh, it's all the migrants' fault, doesn't get us anywhere. The public has not been informed of any procedural changes to make sure this does not happen again. And this situation is hurting the South County severely in regards to the grant money. There are people out there that are hurting and not applying for this grant money because their house could be sold just like the One Stop was. Whether it was a mistake, intentional, what have you, the same people handling the grant money, which converts to trust deeds, building and planning, were also involved in the Hurlong sale. That these are retired people, ex-veterans, their wives, that are suffering because of public perception. And we can't stand here and say, well, you don't have to worry, your house is safe unless you get behind because of what just happened. That the people need more answers, straight answers, not shuck and jive, not political mumbo-jumbo spin and what have you. We need some straight answers. And what we've been getting is mixed messages. When there's the presumption of county heads that possibly lie to other county heads, this is not acceptable. And when they get awards almost immediately afterwards, sends the wrong message to not only the public, but to other county employees. That we need some straight answers. I know it's a hot potato. I know it's an election year. But that doesn't change the facts of what happened. And so I've come for an agenda item. And I'm hoping that I won't get a fight over it or any, Mount Rushmore interpretation where you just sit there and stare at me. Now, I'm not going to cast any aspersions on anybody today, but we need to know what happened. We need to know how you guys truly feel about it. And promoting a gentleman who was the head of the sale, whether he's getting money, privilege, or has nothing to do with it. We need to know if the extent the permanent county employees played in this so that we can trust our government. And so I'm asking for a vote, an agendized vote on whether Mr. Egan carried out the sale the way you wanted it to. If so, you tell him stay. If he did not supervise his staff to get the sale to an outcome that you wanted, you ask him to resign. Simply symbolic. I realize he's an elected official. He does not have to resign if you ask him. But then everybody who raises their hand one way or the other, the public will at least know where you stand when it comes to are long-standing county employees and officials.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna just stop you there because we are limited out of time, but it's public comment and we can't get into too much back and forth. But I will say, we did have the item agendized some weeks ago. I particularly went through a detailed explanation from beginning to end, and it was a mistake. At
Was
the
that
time,
the 26th? November 26th?
probably, it sounds about right.
That
And
was a very brief explanation
okay,
that day.
But at the time, you know, I mean, Mr. Egan was the treasurer. He wasn't the person put directly in charge of the deal, but we need to.
You
leave it-
voted
we
to
need
put him as the head of the sale.
Yeah.
The supervisors did, appointed him the head.
Well, we will, thank you for coming. I appreciate your frustration. I mean, I think we're all share in the frustration. It was a mistake. And if the majority of the board feels that we need to readdress it as an agendized item, we'll do so. And that's how the process works, but we do need to move on now. And I thank you for coming. And I share your frustration, I really do, whether you believe that or
Well,
not. I do.
you just impounded it because you won't even agendize it. Saying you did this little investigation because
Yeah.
she brought forth that she contacted all these county employees.
Okay.
We've never found out who
We
they
need to
were.
move on now, though, sir. We will discuss this further, but we do need to move on now.
But you will not agendize it.
What's the pleasure of the board? Is there the other two?
Well, Larry, you know that we had one employee, and that's a CAO, and he was summarily asked to leave over this issue. We have had some instability at the top of our infrastructure, and yeah, I'd like to address this in a little bit deeper fashion. And and we've discussed also that it shouldn't stop with that one particular individual.
Well, we need to see the entire picture and we need to know that changes were made to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
That something has to be put in place. You know, we talk about, you know, we've seen articles in the paper how well these guys work together. Well, it doesn't seem that way.
Well, we have started a restructuring process. It's in the first formal stages of it. So, and that is the result of what happened down there. We haven't got it started, but it's on the blueprint for the future.
Perhaps if I could jump in, a good thing to answer your question is maybe in the very near future, we could agendize the restructuring process or things along the lines we've talked about and improvements we need to make as a county. I think that will answer some of your questions, but I'm going to quickly go to the other board members and we need to move on.
I just want to make one clarification, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Hammond's comment concerning the employee being summarily dismissed because of the situation. And I realize that for some of the board members, that was the reason and motivation.
Wrong term.
Yeah.
Wrong term.
You know,
Okay.
reason and motivation for Mr. Nichols' departure.
Right.
I voted to support Mr. Nichols' departure. Had nothing to do with Hurlong or the property mistake or the deed mistake. Had nothing to do with that. I just want to make sure the record reflects that each board member came to whatever conclusion they did for their reasons that were stated at the time, and I stated my reason at that time, but it was not in conjunction with the Hurlong issue.
Aaron, you have-
In fact, let me clarify, Larry, he was asked to do some stuff for us that did not get accomplished, and that was the ultimate final straw.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to move on. Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it, but we can't, we got other stuff to do. And we will come back to this, I promise you, I can assure you.
Well, it's been months now.
Okay.
You know, are we gonna wait till after the election because it's a political
No.
hot potato and you don't wanna jeopardize anybody's reelection plans?
We're going to readdress it, and if we don't, you can come back in, in 6 weeks or so and direct your frustration directly to me, but I could assure you it's going to come up before then, the whole plan. But anyhow,
I hope so, and I hope it's not just smoke.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to? Violet?
Yes, I wanted to thank you very kindly for reading my poem at that last meeting.
I've been worried about this day since the time I
Why?
read it, because I knew we would meet at this meeting, and I was hoping that you would think
I
that I did okay.
appreciate you doing it for me, thank you.
I enjoyed it, and I appreciate all of your poems.
I
really
gave
do.
her a full report on your, and you did it awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Violet.
Thank you
I appreciate
very
it.
much.
Anytime, with pleasure, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then, Richard, can you announce the items to be discussed in closed session?
Items to be addressed in closed session are significant exposure. Yes, significant exposure to litigation, 2 cases, and employee performance evaluation, fair manager, and public employee employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54945.5, County Council and County Administrative Officer.
Thank you. With that, we'll go into closed session. Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Supervisor Chapman, would like
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, we pray this day for your ever-enduring guidance. We ask you, cloak us in wisdom and fortitude, that we may disperse our knowledge and facts intelligently among all humanity of whom we serve. Amen. Richard, can you please announce the items discussed in closed session? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the Board of Supervisors met in closed session to discuss significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, 2 cases. Also met to discuss employee performance evaluation, fair manager Jim Walcott, and number 4, the public employment pursuant to Government Code 54954.5, County Council and County Administrative Officer. The board gave fair manager Jim Walcott an outstanding evaluation and continued all other items until the end of the public session.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda approval, additions, and or deletions. Anybody from the public like to comment on this item? If not, we will be looking for a motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where you have a opportunity to comment on anything you'd like. If you do want to wait and comment before the agenda item comes up, you can do so, or if you can't be here, then you're welcome to comment on the item at this time. Okay. Eileen Spencer.
Eileen Spencer, I'm from County Health in Westwood. This public board failed to place the LAFCO resolution on the agenda today. This was given to you on January 27th by LAFCO Executive Officer John Benoit. This is the second time you have ignored action that was needed to be placed for the Southern Cascades Community Service Districts on the June ballot. You, this board, now have created yet another avoidable emergency.
Thank you. James Hodge. Oh. Sorry, Jim.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead, Jim, sorry about that.
Okay. I came to address the capital improvement plan again. I know I'm like a bad penny that just keeps coming around, but I know that hasn't been completed yet, and I wanted to offer some further thoughts about it. I know that Richard Egan has probably given you, or will be giving you one that Marty Nichols kind of came up with that is let's say it's a decent first step, but it's not very supportive, it's not very conclusive, it's not very extensive. And what I would like to see really is a melding of the budget plan and a capital improvement plan. Basically, that's kind of a situation where we're developing a foundation, we're developing a game plan, we're developing priorities, we're spending for all of the projects and the maintenance in the county, and we're figuring out some way of measuring it, and at year end that there's some kind of report card. We got A, B, and D done, but we didn't get C done. You know, and then is C still important, or do we need to roll it over, move it up the list, down the list, whatever? But there's some kind of an organized method for all of this. The other thing is that people would like to know, where are the pots of money? And somebody says, well, there's a big pot over here. Well, yeah, but it's only earmarked for roads or for buildings or for maintenance, or whatever it is. People would like to know about that. It just is more of a case of transparency. It lets the people become more involved, and I just think it would be a great idea. And as a guideline, that's where I think that maybe we ought to be going. Last week on the TV news, the city of Reno was doing that very thing. As a city, they were going over their strategic plan. So other places do it. I gave to Richard Egan, or emailed it to him yesterday. The state of Massachusetts has sort of a guideline for communities. It really is not, the way it's exactly set up is not appropriate for Lassen County, but it gives us some other thoughts. Basically, that there's a way to go. There's a blending of budget. There's a blending of all the maintenance. We have a lot of buildings and equipment here that are old. We need to sort of know about that. To me, the idea of proceeding with a pool or with another board of supervisors room is idiotic without that plan in place. There needs to be priorities. The one other thing I wanted to comment about, because elections are coming up, personally, I would like to see that we nix the discretionary fund. I think that people should have the opportunity, let's say, to apply. If there's some club in Westwood or in Hurlong or whatever, and they'd like to get $500 or whatever, that they should have a short form application, that it comes before the board, it's approved or not approved, and then the check comes from the county, not from a person. When it comes from a person, it's sort of crony capitalism. It's picking winners and losers, and some people would even say it's buying votes. So I'd like to see us use an alternative to that, and I would like to see that on the agenda in the very near future and to eliminate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure under the agendized item on the capital improvement plan, we'll talk more about some of the suggestions that you came up with on that. Appreciate it. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to talk under public comment?
I'd just like to mention something, but it really isn't, I'll go up to the podium.
Just take
My name is John Denroy, the LAFCO Executive Officer. Yesterday, we approved the resolution for the formation of the Southern Cascades Community Services District. And we have also a proposed resolution. I'm not going to hand these out. I'm going to hand these to Susan so you guys can have these available at your next, when you hold your, hearing on this. And And so, at this point, I just want to hand these out, and we've been going round and round about, whether or not a hearing is required, but I'm not your legal counsel, so I'm not going to make any interpretations, and that's their job. Again, I always recommend err on the side of caution and just hold a public hearing. I mean, just in a lot of cases, even if it doesn't require one, but there is a special tax associated with this, and everybody has a right to know. So I'm going to hand over a draft legal notice, and it's really going to be up to the county to file that and the code section.
Thank you.
So that's really about all I can say.
John, is there an extra copy of that?
Yeah, I want to be. I don't have an extra copy of the code section.
I can make a copy. Would you just give her one of everything?
Well, then she doesn't need it next time.
I can tell her I can make the code.
She'll email me the code. I have everything else. I don't have an extra copy of the code.
I'll email that to you.
No, I need it today and I'll wait for it.
Okay, thank you, John. We're gonna move along to unagendized board report. We'll start off with you, Supervisor Chapman.
Just a couple of things. We had the LAFCO meeting yesterday, and I think the discussion's already kind of covered it. Hopefully, things will be sorted out in terms of who's communicating. I think communication channels are a little bit skewed. What I'd like to do, though, is on the discretionary fund, I'd like to allocate $1,000 for the Lassen Library District and $500 for the Arts Council, which are ones I normally give every year, so. You know, so there's.
Thank you very much. Aaron?
Yeah, I attended the CWPP meeting here, I guess it was last week. Anyway, they're moving forward with getting the cooperation installed for the parties. They got the Forest Service taken care of, which is the big hurdle. And they have several other partners coming on board, so hopefully we'll see that MOU come to us coming up. They're working on that. Some of the projects, they have a whole list of projects, but I think the #1 project that funded on their scoring system as well as the CAL FIRE scoring system, I believe was Diamond Crest, that happened to be the #1 scoring. And I also attended the LAFCO meeting yesterday just as a private citizen. It was very interesting. I think this thing's gonna move forward, just as Jim said, I won't go any deeper than that. And the other thing that I would like to do is, I would like to ask for the agenda for the next meeting is have on the agenda to utilize the referee clause for the Vermont sale. Has to be, that put on the agenda.
Okay.
That's all I
Did you get that, Richard? Okay, referee, Aaron had an agenda request.
put it on the agenda to utilize the referee clause.
On the Pearl and West.
Yes.
What meeting would you like?
Next meeting.
Can we do that?
If we
Because
do
there's a
that.
holiday tomorrow, so I don't know if there's time to do it for the 18th.
Is there information that you want to just, as a discussion item, or is there?
Is an action item to utilize the referee clause.
To invoke it?
Yes. If we don't have time on the 18th, we'll do it the 25th. The sooner the better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Paul?
We have another picture.
Looking nice and rested? Yeah. Tom?
I attended the Levitt Lakes board meeting, and they seem to be moving along with their issues with Lahontan, and I saw that there's some possibilities for them to get additional funding, which is all good, and I'm thinking Kathy might be here, maybe not. No? Okay. They're in kind of a tough way there with their water and sewer, and I urge us to take a look at them to assist them in any way we can. They're making a big effort to rectify their issues, and it was a good meeting.
Thank you. I also attended LAFCO. It was a good meeting. A couple of the other things that were discussed was for the city and the county to perhaps change the structure of new projects, whereas some sort of the viability or feasibility economic analysis would be, right now, that's kind of at the back end of the process, so. It makes perfectly good sense where now, it's for annexations, and there's a lot of money spent by the applicant, and along the process, then when you get to the end, the economic analysis to make sure what's gonna be viable for, and cost neutral for the services, and the tax share agreement comes at the end of it. And in many cases, the economics of it do not support the annexation, so rather let the applicant find that information out, address it in the beginning, and it's gonna save not only the applicant, but also staff and a lot of money, time, and ultimately maybe frustration. So anyhow, I think Maury with Jared and the city are gonna be working on that. And then we also touched on possibly down the road, changing going from the Roberts Rules of Orders, which we currently use as a county to run our meetings, to the Rosenbergs. And Supervisor Chapman's very familiar with both. The Rosenbergs, I think, came into existence in 2011.
Well, it's been, Judge Rosenberg from Yolo County is the author of basically a revised version of Robert's Rules of Order, something that's designed for small boards and commissions rather than British parliaments and American Legion conventions and so forth, which is what Robert's Rules of Order was originally established for. And so one of the things that we talked about is LAFCO maybe sponsoring or hosting in conjunction with their ethics training and whatever it would be, to have a session to make boards and commissions, and the public for that matter, familiar with this alternative Rosenberg's Rules of Order. Judge Rosenberg presented it at the Cal LAFCO conference last fall, and Bob Allen had been in attendance, and he does a very impressive job. I'd even suggest that we consider whatever the cost would be to invite him to come up, and he can talk about, it's actually Robert's Rules of Order, but just put into a form and context that works for small groups, and he can explain and maybe do some training. But I think it's something that we should look at pursuing. I know Melody Brawley has implemented, she apparently was exposed to it at some conference she went to a couple of years ago, and she's got most of her boards and committees within Health and Social Services using that as a simplified version. But Judge Rosenberg started out as a city councilman back in the 80s in Davis, was the mayor, went on to be a county supervisor for several years, was appointed by the governor to be his local government liaison and stuff. But he attended, just numerous state and local meetings over a 25-year period of time, and he just saw the frustration of trying to adapt Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, it's something that's like this thick when you look at the real thing. They got a revised version that's about this thick, and he's basically extracted all the principles and put them into it's about like maybe 8 pages long, that has all the key things that you have to do to run an orderly meeting. And he put that together and started promoting it around 2006, with the latest version he's promoting was copyrighted or created in 2011.
Thank you, yeah. But in a nutshell, the way the county runs its meetings, and most other counties, is based off of very, very, very old system of rules. And like Supervisor Chapman said, initially designed for big parliamentary, huge amounts of meetings. So anyhow, that might be coming up down the road. And that's all I have, so thanks. We'll move along. Let's take up item G1, the minutes of January 14 and January 21 of 2014. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item? If not, we'll bring it back to the board and looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, so moving and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, passes Let's go ahead and take up the information and consent item G4. I do have one card from Eileen Spencer I'd like to pull item G4, so. Is there any other items that anybody would like pulled off the information consent calendar for further discussion? So if not, I'm looking for any public comment on that, or any of the other items? Okay, if not, we'll bring it back, and I'm looking for a motion for that. Do we have a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The chair votes aye. So let's take up item G4. Eileen, would you like to talk on that item?
Thank you. The Herlong Public Utility District was created under LAFCO and is a public utility. It has a public board and subject to all the laws under the Public Utilities Commission and the Brown Act. The HPUD can form a Parks and Recreation Association on its own. The county published a RFP for Herlong's Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and according to the documents available on this week's agenda, it hasn't been authorized yet. This RFP, and again, I personally resent the consent calendar because an RFP was issued. It wasn't ever put on the agenda, and you're asking the public to participate in an RFP, request for proposal, and yet you hide this particular issue, and you have, on a regular basis, this type of issue. You hide it in the consent calendar. There is nothing on any agenda that has separately agendized the master plan for Parks and Recreation. We're not against the Parks and Recreation master plan. I've talked to Felix Flores about this, and they, for some silly reason, they trust you to do this when in the past nothing you've done, nothing this board has done has helped Herlong at all. So you wonder why nobody responds to these RFPs? It's because you hide them, and then you accidentally find them in the newspaper. I cut it out, clipped it, and it's for an RFP for Herlong, who is perfectly capable of doing this on their own and should be doing it on their own. And so I just would like this board at some point in time to start being upfront, stop hiding things. This RFP is important to Herlong. They have space available. I have the 12 things that the county was supposed to do with the money, the federal money. Number 7 of the 12 you were supposed to do that you didn't do any of these things. Provide needed improvements to the community's recreation, cultural, and other community facilities to better serve the project area. You didn't do any of that. Now you're doing an RFP for Herlong Public Utilities District, and you do it secretly. You need to put these things on a separate agenda so the people from Herlong, the people from Westwood, the people, whoever involved, can come to these meetings. They'll see it on the agenda, open front, just, honestly. And they can come and tell you how they feel. Publishing this secretly and I use the word secretly is because it's never been agendized. And I understand from planning it doesn't have to be agendized, but as a board, you need to do better. on letting the people know. This is important to Hurlong, and they deserve this park. They deserved it when you had money to do it, and you squandered it. So now to do it this way, I don't know, I'm just tired of the way you hide things. I think the consent calendar is bogus, especially when you use it to hide things like this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on item G4? Any members of the board?
Well, this is not an action item, this is just receiving a report from the department as to what they're doing, so there was no action being sought. So the fact that the department reported they're dealing with this RFP is the department's business, and I appreciate them keeping the board informed, and through the board, the public informed.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the RFP and all that. We get this every month as information.
Yes, you need to.
And I also appreciate in here with your request, Larry, that since our last meeting, we added on how many applications we've received and what's happened since our last meeting. And I appreciate that. It's nice to know you do lose track and so. Thank you for bringing that to the attention, and thank the staff for putting it in here.
You betcha. Thank you. Okay, looking for a motion to,
I don't think there's one needed, just receive report.
okay, so we'll move on. There was one, I like to say, there was one item that I had thought it was on a separate deal that I had some questions on. I know we've already approved it. There was item G2 to do with the Frontier contract, so.
We can take it.
Okay, I'd like to bring back item G2 for discussion. So, yeah, I just wanted to see, did we bid this and check with other people like Sierra, Rural Electric, and any of the others, or if we just went with the Frontier one?
I believe that's the case. I wish Julie was here to address that, but I know it was done consistent with the purchasing policy. I'm not sure exactly who was on that.
We're working in the season. They're using, they're going both ways.
Yeah. I myself would like to see this one addressed a little bit more in depth, just because of the reliability factor of Frontier. I was down 3 times last week with Frontier, and I know when the county goes down, that's a huge thing. And I know I'd have to recuse myself from this issue if it came to a vote or anything, but I know REA has got a redundant system to where they're not going down, and they're offering 50 megabytes, and I think they can do it cheaper. So.
Sure, it was our way if we could table it.
Oh, yeah, sure, thank you. We'll come back to that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's, let's go to item D2, at 10 o'clock, Williamson Act, issues. We'll start off with a staff report.
Mr. Chairman, I will excuse myself from this agenda item as I do have it on the
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Galen Norwood, Assistant Director of Planning and Building Services. This is the last of the protests that we received for the non-renewals that were done in 2013 pursuant to the policies and procedures that the board had adopted in 2012. So the board at that time, you will recall, established some acreage requirements, also established that conservation easements shouldn't be in the program. And so accordingly, non-renewal notices were sent, and as is their right, some protested that action, and that's what we're considering here today. The first one is Perez, the Mario and Marley Perez Trust. And this is one of those that's an acreage requirement. It doesn't have the acreage to be in the contract once with the, pursuant to the policies that we have, and so the nominal was sent. If you have any questions, I know that's an abbreviated staff report, but you've heard these before, so.
Right, in my packet, I have D 3, 4, 5, and 6, but was there a D2 that was supposed to be?
Well, D2, I think on the agenda is the heading
It's the head,
for all of
the
them.
label on the agenda, it's not the actual item, it's the only word it's.
Oh, great, okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So, you know, the Mario and Marilee, if I'm not saying it right, Perez Trust was non-renewed because it didn't meet the requirements of the contract acreage requirements. You'll see on page 2 of the staff report, the parcels, we have 120 acres, approximately 5.76 and 102, and there is no irrigation, therefore, or not a functioning irrigation system, I should say, that meets that definition in our requirements. Therefore, it was non-renewed. You have the protest in front of you.
I'm sorry, what was the size of the parcels?
120 acres, 5.76 acres, and 102.4 acres. And the requirement is to have 400 acres if you're not going to have the associated irrigation.
Okay. Is the applicant, the Perez's, are they here, would they like to comment?
I can't speak to that.
No, okay. Okay, do any of the board members have any questions?